Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Pencils and Pistons channel to Supply Chain 101 course. I hope you're all safe and sound in whichever part of the world that you are listening this from. And this is greetings from India from me, Rashmeet, and Sandeep sir. Welcome, Sandeep sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So it's been like exciting set of episodes for us wherein we have been talking about the basics of different elements of supply chain. And for today's episode, our focus is going to be on the logistics, that is the last leg of the supply chain. And it's the most customer facing part of the operations. And it's like, I believe that it's something that one cannot master and because it's so dynamic. So I'm really glad, Sandeep, so you are here to talk to us about it. And just give me a shout when you are ready to get started and we can get right into it.
Yeah, absolutely. All set. So, and thank you for inviting me. I think every time we have this conversation, I think I feel very, very fulfilled. So, I always look forward to having these more. So, thank you for
Amazing.
that.
Amazing. Sir. It's your support that keeps us going. So, for all of you there, let's get started. We'll start with the basics today, sir. That what's the role of logistics and transportation as a function? Let's just start with the roles, functionalities, and the multiple activities are that are a part of the same.
Okay. I think that's a great question. If you look at it, you had procurement where you had the raw materials and services which you buy. Then you went into sourcing. So you decided which are the suppliers you want to do. Now we move to the next part where if you are a manufacturing company, you will manufacture. If you are a trading company, you will buy. Now that you have a customer order, you have already have the materials or the services in place. Now that has to reach to the customer. So that's why if you look at it, this is one of the most important legs of the supply chain because even the pandemic has taught us that in order to survive, those have to reach the customer. So I can have a brilliant product, I can have a brilliant service, but unless it reaches the customer on time and within the budget, I think it doesn't really result in a customer delight. See, all this thing we talk about sales, very, very critical, customer relationship, very, very critical, customer experience, very, very critical. But to be very honest, the logistics function is always understood as the operations guy, the behind the scenes guys. But do understand that these are the guys who are actually bringing it to your home. Because if you look at it during this pandemic, when it was difficult to have even have food, the delivery guys were actually who actually kept us all alive. Similarly, for the fruits and vegetables, they traveled long distances. And again, it's this function which actually kept everything alive. So if I look at it, logistics and transportation, these are the two subsets of this, if I say, customer delivery function. In logistics, we deal with both outbound and inbound because some of the in case what we miss out it, our logistics is thought that we are delivering to the customer, but there are a lot of times when we are buying from your suppliers, there has to be a logistics. You need to decide on your transportation if the supplier is not providing that. Second aspect in terms of returns, a lot of companies actually say that you drop it at a particular location, we will pick up. So that's where logistics again becomes very, very critical when it comes to reverse logistics. And if you have a replacement kind of thing, you get that material, you again replace it. So that's where again logistics becomes very, very critical. Now, what I touched upon is mostly the transportation part of the logistics function, but there is a warehouse function which is very, very critical. Now, why do we need a warehouse? The ideal case is we produce and similarly sell it to the customer. Now, if you look at it, any supply chain, it goes through hiccups, and the more upstream you are in the supply chain, the hiccups will be felt more because there's an information asymmetry because the demand changes, that gets communicated to one layer, then it gets communicated to the another layer, and finally when it comes to production guys, they are the last people to know it. So for them to adjust to production, it's very, very critical. That's why what we do is we create a temporary storage so that we actually even out some of this production, and whenever the customer needs it, we will deliver. For example, demands will come in spikes. You cannot have the same demand every day, but you cannot produce in spikes because any manufacturing facility, it will have a setup time, it will have a labor cost, and every factory you should actually operate at certain minimum volume, because otherwise you will not even recover your fixed cost. So that's why even if you even out that production, so you still need to, what you do with the excess inventory. A lot of times companies, what they do is they store it in their factories itself. But what I have seen is in one of the 98, when there was a temporary worker strike at the plant and automobile was down, our plants were all piled up. So we had no place to store our trucks. So that is where I think warehousing becomes very, very critical, because that's where I bridge the demand and supply gap, because that's an intermediate thing, because it costs me, but do understand that I cannot really vary my production based on the customer demands. It's an unviable proposition. That is why it's very, very critical. Unfortunately, India, we feel warehouse is just a go down, but do understand that there's a lot of intelligence there, because I have spent years in the when I was working with a cement company in a cement go down. And I know 31st December, when the whole world was partying, we were at the warehouse closing the books. So again, that's a very, very critical function. But I'm not trying to glorify them, but that's a very, very important, essential function of the supply chain.
Very much so. In fact, when you said that about 31st December, it reminded me that the very most genuine reason why people take logistics and warehousing and transportation side of activities for granted is purely because it is the only one that's functioning 24/7, 365 days.
Absolutely.
And anything in our life that goes that constantly, we kind of tend to forget about it. But like you said, there is so much that can actually be done, and it has already been done. In fact, from a technology standpoint as well, the most use cases of implementation of technology where it has shown substantial benefit, is it's towards this execution side of the supply chain.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
In fact, just to a little bit of trivia, like if you look at one survey, not a survey, it's a study which was done, that most of the times things fail because of poor execution, not because of a poor idea. A poor idea and a better execution will still sell you, but a great idea and a poor execution is actually, it's a lose-lose for everybody.
Absolutely, absolutely bang on with that. I mean, that was like a great insight into getting started with it. And now let's just kind of smooth into the uh, tactical level activities, or what does the a job role for somebody in these, three different segments look like? What is it that they'll be doing in warehousing, transportation, or logistics in general?
Okay, I think that's a great question, because it's very, very important. Because again, as I said, people think it as a back end job, as a thankless job, and it's because it's not glorified, because procurement is glorified, logistics and transportation is not. But do understand that this has a lot of intelligence built around it. Let me take it one by one. First, let's look at the warehouse. Now, what I spoke about is you still need a warehouse, because you need to really even out your supply chain. Because if you try to match your demand and supply exactly, you will have too much hiccups in supply chain, which is unmanageable. So once that you decide that you want to have a storage, now the second part which comes is, where do you store? Now, for India, it's a very, very challenging thing, because before the GST came into picture, each state has its own taxes. For example, you had octroi, you had some value added tax. So if I have to do business in 29 states, I will open 29 warehouses, which is very, very suboptimal, because our supply chains were designed based on tax laws. Now that the goods and services tax has come in, when we are talking about a one country one tax, of course it's not one tax, there are still 4 or 5 slabs, but if you look at it, it's still uniform. So that's why we are rethinking the whole thing, that we will have bigger warehouses and more efficient warehouses. The entire logistic, the warehousing thing is actually being redrawn. Now, the point which comes is we have actually built a lot of these warehouses. What do we do with these existing land? See, thing is, either I can convert it to another factories, or I can make it use it for some other purpose. But do understand that consolidation of warehouse has to happen. Unfortunately, again, India, it's still late. We don't have very sophisticated warehouses. But if you look at some of the companies like Godrej, they have one of the most sophisticated warehouse. In fact, there's an automated retrieval system which they have designed. So there's an intelligence. You have a barcode. It will go and say that I should place this packet here. And whenever there's a customer order comes in, based on the FIFO logic, the automated device or vehicle will automatically pick up. Pharma companies have to do it because many of these warehouses have to be temperature controlled. And that's why it's just not a plain go down. The cement warehouses, if you look at it, we still equate warehouses with cement warehouses. Again, they are quite crude because if you look at it, we load and unload cement using still those hooks, which actually damage it. But unless we have a better way of doing it, because it's all depends on the cost benefit. If my manpower is expensive, maybe I will go for an automated one. But as long as the machines are costing more, I'm still okay with a manpower. In fact, Amazon is a classic example. They have a huge warehouse around Hyderabad. And Amazon US warehouses, you will see a lot of these automated systems. But in India, as you say that manpower is not that, again, I am not saying it's cheap, because that's not a very good word to use, but what works for one country may not work for another country. And we are fine with actually using manpower in these warehouses. So warehouse design is another aspect which is very, very critical. And unfortunately, it's not really picked up. So this is an area where really people can look at, because what we are moving is multi-commodity warehouses. You cannot have a warehouse which only stores one type of material, because most companies deal with multiple. Most dealers deal with, say, iron, cement, and a lot of other commodities. So you need to have a facility where you can have multi-commodity warehouse. In fact, as I speak, FMCG companies are experimenting with a set of companies. These are warehouse on demand, because the demand is fluctuating. And if you look at it, I cannot just build a warehouse for this fluctuating demand. So there are these companies which will rent out, which will manage it for you. And of course, you pay a premium, but still it is cheaper. So that's again a new breed of companies which is coming in. So having looked at the warehouse, the next part which comes is my uh, uh, transportation. Now, before I move to transportation, some of the warehouses are even doing value-added services, because some part of manufacturing, some part of packaging is also done. Because if you look at it, I've been speaking about the power of postponement, where you have a standardized product, you differentiate it closer to the customer, and warehouses are doing it. You have a, say, semi knocked down product in the warehouse, and you do the final assembly in the warehouse. And I think that's a great way to actually connect with the customer, and warehouses are slowly graduating to that. Now, second aspect is the transportation. Now, transportation is very, very critical, because there are two ways: outbound, where you are actually shipping to the customers, and there's of course inbound, where you are taking the goods from your suppliers. Now, transportation is just not I arrange trucks, because unfortunately, even in some of the industries, I have seen that the way it works is I know that I have to ship so much. I know that these are the transportation. I will call up early in the morning that do you have so many trucks? And if you look at it, if the volumes, if the number of trucks are still excess, you are still okay. But if you see there is a demand supply mismatch, what happened during the pandemic, because when the announcement was made that stay at home, the people who were driving the trucks, they stayed home. So we had, though logistics was essential services, because of lack of manpower, we actually really faltered there. So any transportation, it's also needs to be a long-term planning, because I know that this is my volume and this is how I need to. And what is really lacking in something is a multimodal, because in India, we still believe that roadways is the best way to do it. But roadways are the most expensive way to transport materials. Next comes railways, still expensive, but what happens is you are always at the mercy of the Indian railways. So that's where the problem is. You have to really canvas with the Indian railways to get a rake. For example, if I say Northeast, the food grains get a prominence. So you will not get a rake from the Indian railways to uh, ship your commodity. So that's where I think roadways gets a dominance, but again, that's very, very suboptimal. The third aspect is airways. People think that airlines is expensive. But if you look at it, when I was studying, yes, air tickets were expensive. But then Air Deccan came in and it actually changed the business model. Now everybody can actually afford an air ticket. Same thing needs to happen for the logistics sector as well. If we have better handling, if we have dedicated, in fact, in the pandemic, if I look at it, Turkish Airlines, they were very profitable because Turkish cargo was profitable. They were not shipping passengers, they were not flying passengers, but they were flying cargo. And this is a sector which is not really addressed much. So this is an area where I think we need to really look at. Uh, the fourth is a combination of these two, because when I see that if I have to travel from say Trivandrum to Ahmedabad, the first thing which comes is I should do roadways. But we have a huge coastal line and waterways is 1/6 of the cost. So why the only thing is we have not challenged these assumptions. We are so used to working in certain way. So that is the reason this multimodal, this skewness, we have not really done any analysis. I think this is an area which is very, very important because that can lead to huge savings because transportation is still a non-value added activity. You cannot charge a lot of money to your customers. An interesting conversation which was happening is if I say some of the mangoes which are only available in West Bengal, but there's a demand from the customers in Delhi. And these mangoes, they have a very, the shelf life is low. So I have to ship them overnight. And a 500 rupees a kilo mango becomes 2,700 when it lands in Delhi. So the customer is not going to pay so much for that. So this is an area I think if you can really package it in a way that it is affordable. So that's again an aspect which needs to be looked at. And the final aspect which I wanted to talk about in this function is the cold chain. Again, cold chain doesn't mean that it has to be cold. It's only temperature control because 20 degree centigrade throughout is still cold chain. Thing is, it's called cold chain because for whatever reason, but it's not actually cold. So what is happening is in some of the logistics network, it is broken. You travel one leg with 20 degree, but when you go to the other leg, it becomes 25 degree. The real purpose of the cold chain is lost. So this is an area where actually a lot of investment is happening and we are seeing a lot of these traction. To be, as Rashid was saying, yes, it's a ever dynamic function, very analytical. And if you look at most of the analytics which has developed in supply chain, address this only. You hardly get any new analytics really in the production or the procurement. Most of the things, because this is where the major chunk is, this is where people see the potential of cost savings. In fact, I was speaking to the government of Sri Lanka and they were thinking about upgrading their ports with a $500 billion. But that's a huge investment. So then we gave them an idea, why don't you use drones, bigger drones? And that can actually become affordable for you. So this is the thing, people are experimenting and slowly it is actually going to come in a big. So this is a very, very exciting thing. It's not glorified, but do understand the kind of problems which the problem of every day is so different for you that at the end of the day, if you really love this profession, I think you will have a fulfilling day every day.
Absolutely. Since you mentioned a fulfilling day, one of the fulfilling days I had as a student when I was in UK, I was living in Milton Keynes, and there was this big Amazon, warehouse there. And one of these days, I was sitting in the bus, and I randomly saw a small little robot, with Amazon sign on it, and it was, dongling out, and I thought probably I'm dreaming, And then I looked at it
Wow.
like, no, it's actually taking a delivery. And it was one of the most fulfilling days for me because till now I had, heard about it and read about such technologies or, seen videos. And then I saw it live. And then that became a regular thing. Every time we'd go on a bus towards that area, we realized that there's a warehouse close by. So there's so much of technology and data points that can be leveraged in this particular segment, and I think it has gotten really exciting, and particularly Amazon being in that chunk, they are the ones who leveraged this side of operations the most. I think that's a cue for each one of us to realize, acknowledge, accept that there is so much that can actually be done on lines of what you just talked about, sir.
In fact, just again, another bit of trivia. When I joined a cement company after my post graduation, so for first 2 months, I was put in charge of a railway rake, where my job was to look at how the bags are stacked inside a railway rake. I used to hate my job, like saying, "What am I doing? Why did I study so much?" But if you look at it, the way the bags are packed in a railway wagon, there's a science behind that, so that you can actually use maximum space. So all these things, I know I used to hate that thing at that point of time, but because I have gone through this, I know that because I have done that kind of execution, maybe my decision making is much, much better today, because strategy and operations have to go hand in hand. Unless you have done it with your own hand, you will first of all never realize what are the pains of doing that, and you will not really appreciate, because everything looks fine on books on or sitting in a room, but right there are certain intricacies which I think no textbook in the world can actually give.
Absolutely bang on with that, sir. Until unless you have been on a shop floor, you cannot really understand what actually goes inside there and what are the actual struggles, the on-job struggles in there. Thank you so much for bringing up that aspect. Um, in fact, since we have talked about the various sub activities or the roles that can be a part of these functions, can we look at the KPIs, the key performance indices that should be looked at? Because I remember I googled for one of my research projects that what are the KPIs. I found hundreds and thousands of them. However, the ones that need to be picked up or hand picked, or probably not even those KPIs, what are the categories of KPIs one should look at and primarily focus on, is what I want to understand.
So I think it's a great thing that this linked very much to your previous question, because as I was saying that a lot of the analytics which has been developed is over in this function, because people are still struggling to really find out where am I going wrong. Now what I'm trying to say is the fundamentals don't change. Certain things are remain the same. You still need to look at your on time delivery, you need to still look at your order accuracy. But the major shift which has to happen in this function is, a lot of times, because you have a logistic specific KPI, you are actually doing a suboptimal design, because production is trying to maximize its own KPI, logistics is trying to maximize its own KPI, procurement is trying to maximize its own KPI, and in the long run the company is losing. So any KPI what is designed has to be tied to the entire company function. So first KPI which is usually used is for logistics, but it is applicable for other function, is OTIF. You must have heard about it long there. Again, it's very basic, on time in full. So what does it mean? I have promised the customer that this I will deliver this on this date in full quantity. Now I measure whether I was able to ship to him on time, whether I am able to ship the entire quantity in time. Now, this doesn't become a logistics KPI only, because first of all, the sales has to put a realistic date in line with what the logistics and the procurement and the production function can do. Second part is, from a production point of view, it's like what typically happens is, if the OTIF is really delayed, the production guys are held responsible. But that's not fair. You work backwards and everybody says that, yes, this is how I will track at each stage. And if the OT fails, it's a joint responsibility of everyone, not one. Unfortunately, it's the logistics guys who get penalized if the OTIF is not fulfilled. But that's, I think, a major shift in thinking, which we need to do when we define OTIF. Second thing, if I look at product accuracy, I know there have been many cases when you ordered something through an e-commerce portal and you ended up, you got something else. So this order accuracy, if you, ideally it should be 100%, but for whatever reason, even if you do 98%, 99%, I think still good enough. Because if your customer has asked for something and you give him something, I think that's the worst thing which you can do. Because in terms of customer delight, customer satisfaction, I think that's a strict no-no. Third, if you look at it, transportation costs. Now, transportation cost is again, the logistics guys are penalized because a lot of times the production is delayed or there is something which has happened and then you have to ship it with an exigency. You may have to airlift it. But what the cost comes is, it comes on the transportation department, not fair. So when you look at it, transportation cost as a percentage of total cost of sales is critical, but it's not just fair that you just blame the logistics function for this. The fourth aspect is a warehousing cost, because storage needs cost, because there is a cost of building a warehouse, there's a fixed cost, there's a cost of running a warehouse, there's a cost of carrying the inventory, there is a cost of inventory obsolescence, there's a cost of inventory damage. So that together, if I look at it, the warehousing cost again is a great KPI to look at. But as I said, is the inventory decision is a joint responsibility, because for a warehouse function, they would like to have minimal because their KPIs are hit. But for procurement, they want to order more because they don't want to order too many times because their KPIs are hit. So this is where I think a unified KPI across the company becomes very, very important. Inventory turnover, how fast you move your inventory, because if your inventory is lying for long, if you're not able to churn it, that's again, it's not a good sign. So a lot of times, if you look at FMCG, very, very critical. You look at your inventory turnover. Inventory turnover is critical because that way your money is not really tied up much in working capital. You don't have the risk of obsolescence. You don't have the risk of carrying too much inventory cost. And then there is something called number of shipments, not a great measure, but I have seen companies using it. Because if I say that if I am delivering to 20 different remote locations, maybe I will have to do 20 shipments because there is no, you really cannot consolidate your load. So that's where I think you still need to have look at whether you can do a cross docking, whether you can have a temporary moving warehouse kind of a thing. Because what Dell does it, they assemble laptops on the go. Again, that's a model which has been copied, which has been studied so many times. But even after so many years, I think Dell does it best. So net, these are some of the KPIs. But as I said, is don't try to reinvent the wheels because the fundamentals have not changed. It's important that we have enough data, we analyze that data and look at where it is and have a uniform KPI for a company rather than a departmental KPI, because that way the company loses. That thinking has to really shift. So that's why I say that again, don't spend too much time in reinventing a new KPI. There are already enough available in the market.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, in fact, I really love the part where you talk about a shift in the mindset and a shift in the thinking, because we have been functioning in silos for like pretty much all this while. In fact, now that we are talking as there's more digitization trends as well, we are seeing that from being like regular silos, we are becoming digital silos now. So,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
that in itself is like the catch. So you can still have better technology, but if your mindset is still the same, like you talked about, you are not going to benefit the organization, and then technology is going to be at the brunt of it. You know what? Technology solutions do not give me the actual benefits. The reason is that you should look at a company as a whole, and more or less like a systems thinking approach. Think of entire supply chain as a system rather than different elements, segregated and thought about and optimized in different manner. There has to be like a centralized optimization throughout.
Absolutely, absolutely bang on. And then we blame that this technology is not good. That's how it is.
Right, precisely. So, in like since we are talking, since we just touched technology here, maybe we could try to go into the understanding of the TMS and the WMS, the transport
Mhm.
management
Yeah.
system and the warehouse management system.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because if I look at most of the companies which they operate, they have a third party logistics provider. Of course, there are companies which operate their own transportation department, but a lot of companies see that because it's not a very value added service. So that's why they either give it to some other uh, party, or they hive it off into a separate company which does transportation for them and also for, so it becomes a PLN, it becomes a profit center. So they are free to be ship anybody's goods and not be bound by the parent company. So if I look at it in terms of the transportation management system, again, there are a lot of technology solutions available in the market. But what I say is, when you are giving it to somebody, as long as you can get a feed, I think that works. You don't have to really invest in a very sophisticated logistic solution, technology solution. So as long as, for example, today a simple smartphone, GPS enabled, it can send you signals that the truck is this location and this is where it is. And what you do, you can actually build if I say a control tower, again, control tower, the way we glorify, it's nothing. If I say it's just a one-stop shop where you run the company looking at one screen. So if you can take those data elements and then look at run your supply chain, I think that is good enough. For warehouse management system, we still don't see much of sophistication really coming in, because people still don't see the value there. But for pharma companies, where the shelf life, where the way how it is handled becomes critical, everything now is barcode. It's all barcoded, and I cannot expect somebody to go around the warehouse, if it's a big warehouse, to search for it. So if I have a device where I know that where exactly to locate it, and don't expect your warehouse personnel to key in there. What we used to do, when I used to do, I used to, at the end of the day, I used to key in what left, what came in, what came out. But right now, if you're talking about speed and the volumes, I think that's not a sustainable solution. So there are low cost solutions. There are very stable solutions using a scanning device and barcode, which can actually do it for you. And the best part is RFID was expensive, but RFID today is available. In fact, an RFID can be as low as 10 rupees, which is very, very low, because people used to question that a shirt costs me 300 rupees, but an RFID tag is 200 rupees. So where is the value? But now we have massive strides in technology that has really worked well. And another thing which has come in the technology solutions is a lot of these things can work offline. For example, there are a lot of spaces. For example, in the oil and gas, typically what I've seen is when you go to a particular site, there is no connectivity, because for whatever reasons, because if you use your cell phone, there are chances of an explosion. So what happens is you can still run offline, and the moment you connect back to the server, it gets synced. So there are offline services which are very much in vogue. So even if you don't have an internet connectivity, that works very well. But having said that, just don't use a technology just because everybody is using it. You have to look at whether it adds any value to you. Because as long as if it works manually, I think it's good. But do understand, you still need to have data. You still need to track it, because at every point of time, the customer wants an intimation that yes, the goods are at this, the goods are leaving the warehouse, the goods are at this toll gate. So if you give that, I think that's the ultimate in customer delight. And a lot of companies are actually using AR, VR to actually give them a visibility of how the vehicle is moving. So again, that's another angle to it. But having said that, WMS is warehouse management system, where we look at the functioning of the warehouse, and any WMS system has to integrate with your transportation management system, because They cannot work in silos. But now today, a lot of these technology are open source. They are based on the cloud. You don't have to really invest in a really expensive ERP, and that really works well. And there are fantastic startups which have come in. And in fact, what I have seen is a lot of companies do a mix of ERP and startups, and they go to the market together. And it's the end-to-end vibe, because last mile, unfortunately, ERP cannot help. That is where your all these startups have come up with brilliant solutions. So there's a lot you can explore, and I think that's again a very interesting field to be in, because the choice of the technology, because you don't need to be really understand coding to understand technology, but as long as you can apply that, because I know people who are brilliant, they know the technology in and out, but what is lacking is the application, how you apply it. That's where I think majority of the thrust has to.
Amazing. The two things that I am taking away from this particular discussion specifically is the way we talked about value. I think value in itself is should be the core, and in some aspects we do take that seriously, and in others we tend to forget. So the very fact that the value addition element of the logistics and transportation side of activities, is on the lower side, it is tend to be taken for granted. It's okay, it's just the execution, we don't need to do much about it. And probably then the focus comes to it only when it becomes a major cost center for you. And
Absolutely.
so that's one approach. But then when we talk about value, we think of value in our manufacturing. That's the most value adding part of the entire operations, and which is why primarily a lot of work has been done on the shop floor, making it smart, and making sure that we are able to produce the right quality of products. And then there's this third aspect of value, that is value should be seen from the customer's aspect rather than other aspects. So I think value is something that I really go back to when I don't know KPIs, when I'm not able to filter out the KPIs. I go back to value and seeing it from the lens that it should be seen. So I'm really glad you mentioned about that. And finally, the part about technology not being used. Everyone's talking about technology, everyone. And I see this, and I've seen this glut of people coming from the technology side, that they don't have domain specific knowledge. And I'd say they don't want to have domain specific knowledge, they want to just implement technology solutions. And I'm like, do you know the problem that you're trying to solve?
Absolutely.
So I'm really glad you brought those two aspects up, because it's something that I am currently dealing with in my workspace as well.
Okay.
So that's about the technology tools and everything. Let's talk more about integration. You talked about the integration part, and about integration, inventory management as a function has to have integration with this function.
Mhm.
And there's this general talk about replacing inventory with information in logistics and warehousing. What do you think about that?
The inventory again, it's very easy to put the blame on inventory whenever something goes wrong. Either you have excess stock or you have a shortage. So that's where this is I think, the problem of mankind from day one, and we are still trying to address it, because again, I cannot predict everything. I cannot predict what the customer wants. I'm assuming that the customer will never change his or her mind, which he or she will. So that is why I think there's a problem. Is the thing is inventory again. You have to have inventory, because a lot of time people say lean, just in time. There is no inventory in my books, but you are just shifting the risk to somebody else. If your channel partner is actually storing it for you and you don't show it in your books, that doesn't solve the problem. Only thing is, from a financial books, it's still not there. You still show a better balance sheet, but do understand that it's your somebody else is actually taking the risk. If I look at an end-to-end supply chain, inventory is always a joint responsibility, and you just cannot just wash away your hands with that. Now, typically inventory, again, a lot of times there's a discussion that who owns it, whether it's a production, because procurement says that we only own raw material. Production says that we only own semi-finished goods, and logistics and will say that we only own finished goods, but that's not the way how you look at it, because an easy way of for purchasing is to store too much raw materials because their KPIs are then met. Similarly, for the production guys, they will produce too much of it and leave it because their KPIs are met. But again, it's a warehouse actually which gets penalized because there is so much of inventory. So that's why again inventory has to be a joint responsibility, and inventory cannot be really what do you say replaced with information, because information and inventory have to go hand in hand, because any movement, be it's because today inventory moves in multi directions. It's inbound, outbound, there are product returns, there are damaged products being replaced, there are goods which are going to the warehouse and coming back because something was detected. So but everything has to be actually, there has to be information exchange along with that. So if I have to reframe it, I think information and inventory are always, it's an inseparable aspect, because they need to go hand in hand. Because if I don't know where my inventory is, how my inventory is, I think the entire the visibility, it's a talk about supply chain visibility. I heard about it way back in 2000, early 2000. Still, we are talking about the same thing because we still don't have a perfect solution for this. So that is where I think a lot of these discussions and technology solutions. But having said that, it's important that choose something which works for you. Don't choose just because it has been proven somewhere else. Don't choose because it has been recommended by somebody, but choose it if, as long as you see value in it. Because today companies are very, very careful in investing, because the way things are moving, it's always a dynamic workspace. You have to always show what is the return on investment, because I have been keeping on it. We are not, a business is not doing really a charity, because at the end of the day we have to still make profits. So that's where I think it's very, very critical that information and inventory have to go hand in hand in multi direction.
I think this is as interesting as it gets because, like you said, we're asking the same questions again and again, trying to come up with different solutions. But at the end of the day, the problems are just the same. Does that mean our problems have not changed? On some level, I don't think they have. And I don't think they will, because inventory is like a question everywhere you go. So thanks for this interesting discussion. And just towards the end of this, I want to like talk about the the kind of, I would like to hear your comment on the challenge of oxygen supply in the country. uh, it was super prominent, but the general idea that people had about the same was that it was a demand supply mismatch kind of an issue. Well, that was actually not the case. It was actually a classic last mile logistic challenge, and I think that'll bring a lot of light on the importance of this particular function. So what's your comment on that, sir?
I think what you said, I agree with what you said. It was not really a demand supply mismatch. It was definitely a last mile. But another angle which I want to bring in, it's fundamentals. Like when you are looking at a country as a whole, you should have an equitable supply all across. For example, a state like Kerala, it had excess oxygen, while in other parts there were some deficit for whatever reason. And there were cases when we really had to transport this from here. So I think that's the classic case where we need to realign. I don't say that each state needs to have its own oxygen supply, but as long as we have availability in nearby areas, I think that is good enough. You, that near shoring has, it's very, very important. Second aspect, if I look at it, if you look at it of the way it travels, unfortunately, we have too many middlemen on layers in the supply chain, and we don't have visibility. So again, second fundamental, supply chain visibility. We don't know. There was enough stock, but we don't know where it was. So that was the second thing which had to be a thing. And third, of course, there was a last mile delivery, because everybody was vying for suddenly there was a huge spurt in demand, unfortunately. And of course, we didn't know whether the demand was, because there have been cases where the demand was genuine, but there were cases when people were just trying to hoard material. That's not fair, but that's what was happening. So that's where I think the demand signal we had to really. But I'm not saying when I talk about this, it's not a technology solution, because a lot of apps have been built in a day's time where people were giving real-time visibility on which hospital has so many beds, so many things. But the critical aspect which needs to be is is important is people have to share data. If I don't tell that my hospital has say 50 beds and 20 are, if I still say that I have only 2 beds and I create an artificial shortage, that's where I think majority, I don't know, we don't have a solution for that. But only thing is we really cannot enforce that also. But if we really have to, from a country's point of view, if we really have to save lives, I think this is where I think we could have done a much better job. In fact, I know there are a lot of people who came forward. People were handling through their Twitter handles. People were building apps, and people have tried to do their best. But somewhere, I think this aspect where people were not very fair about the data which is being shared, I think that has angle. Again, it's. But as I was saying, as previously mentioned, yes, in God we trust. Others have to bring data to the table, but do understand that supply chain partners also there has to be some trust. Otherwise, if you are not sharing data, you cannot enforce it. Your supply chains will not really work. That's important. Again, that's what I said. Supply chain is never an exact science. Whether I think the humanitarian aspect or the social aspect or the liberal arts aspect comes in very. So that's where I think to net, if you look at it, you really don't have to really study supply chain to do supply chain. But as long as you can use your mind, you can think through that there are multiple angles in which a supply chain problem can be handled. It doesn't need to be that you need to be from a science background or something. You know, is there? Yes, there is data, but there is also a humanitarian angle, a social angle, which unfortunately is not been addressed very well.
Very much so. In fact, what you are talking about makes reminds me of the fact that the difference between visibility and transparency. People think visibility and transparency are the same thing, and it's like the most it's commonly used. And I'm not talking about the general people. The people in leadership positions use visibility and transparency interchangeably. While there's a very subtle difference, what you talked about having that information, we had a lot of apps which gave us that visibility, not on like a commercial level, but at least on a localized level, there was that information. But was that information, shared with trust amongst the stakeholders and the multiple supply chain partners? That is where we failed. So I believe while there's a lot of talk about visibility, people tend to ignore the transparency aspect of the same.
Absolutely bang on. Absolutely.
So I'm really glad you brought that up, because generally everyone's like, visibility is the buzzword. Our platform provides the visibility, this and that. And the only question I ask is, okay, so how do you have your stakeholders or your supply chain partners buy in? Because if you do not have the buy in, you do not have the complete data. And if you do not have the complete data, you are basically not solving the problem. How will you
Absolutely.
get that data? Trust, like you just mentioned about.
Absolutely bang on.
So I really think this is like the best way to kind of close today's discussion. Takes us back to what really is relevant in today's world. And thank you so much, Sandeep sir. I mean, I have to say this time and again that it's like these primers into these topics, and whichever, this is our intention at Pencils and Pistons too. The intention is to create open source content, and with the supply chain 101 course, it's like providing a primer to multiple topics, and whatever interests our listeners have, they can then deep dive into the same. So thank you, Sandeep sir, for your time and your dedication, and obviously sharing your experience with us.
And thank you so much, Rashmi. Again, I want to reiterate this open source. I chose to do this because I think not many people have done this. And what I think is the way we are actually living in this world, nobody should really be left out
Yeah.
because of lack of money. So that's not a fair thing. But that way, thank you so much for doing this, because I know there are a lot of books available, there are a lot of courses available, but they all come at a cost. But if you look at it, while software has moved to an open source, we don't have a really supply chain moving to an open source.
Right.
And hopefully with this, because at the end of the day, as I was previously said, that if I can take the community along with me,
Yes.
if we have created an impact, I think our lives are fulfilled. So thank you so much, Rashmi, for this.
Thank you for your time, sir. And that's exactly what we intend to do throughout. In fact, we have created our own Discord community server. On that server, for all the topics from manufacturing, in fact, industry wise, automotive, manufacturing elements, manufacturing technology, all of them, we are, already content that is available out there. We are redirecting that content to the server so that we don't have to go looking out for information if you're a beginner. And in case you need any community support in terms of vetting out your LinkedIn profile, vetting out your CV, or looking out for jobs in the field, we have created that kind of ecosystem within our Discord server at Pencils and Pistons. So we are so excited we are doing this with you and all such people who are supporting us in our endeavors. So thank you so much once again, and thank you so much everyone for listening to us. And we will come back with the next episode in exactly 1 week. Thank you.
Thank you.